Right, and welcome everyone to our conversation today, which is, does stuff really make us happy? Just a few introductions before we get stuck in. We are 4 Women, 4 Decades, if you haven't logged in to see us before. We are all coaches, by the way, and the name 4 Women, 4 Decades because we span 4 decades. Just to briefly introduce who you'll see this evening, I am Natalie, we've got Bea, and we've got Rachel and Rebecca. And just to let you know, Rebecca is Bea's mother. So if Bea accidentally says mum, then you'll know why. In terms of this evening's conversation, I guess the seeds of where it started is when me and my 3 esteemed coach colleagues were having a nice chat when we were together earlier in the year, which was socially distanced, I can assure you. We were talking about stuff and the link to happiness, and we just thought, oh my God, it was just such an amazing conversation. We need to bring this to an audience. So that's what's happening now. And there's not really a particular right or wrong answer, but we think it's a really good topic to spend an hour talking about. And what our hope to do is to lift a bit of a lid on the subject and unpick some of the stuff that's happening underneath the surface in terms of our thoughts and behaviours around the topic of shopping. And maybe throughout the conversation, you might get a few insights or maybe not. Certainly in terms of the 4 of us, when we sat down and talked about the topic, we noticed that there'd been some shift that had taken place in terms of our perspective around the way we made purchases. And we're noticing, and I think some of the key messages is going to be coming around about noticing what we're doing. Just before we launch in, I wanted to set the scene a bit in terms of what's happening for us on a I guess the psychology of it a little bit, in terms of actually, can an inanimate object make us happy? Okay, so if we're thinking about an item, is it possible that that could make us happy? It certainly feels like it can. It's certainly, you know, we can look at something that we admire or like, and it certainly can provoke feelings and emotions, and we really, you know, have a relationship with it where it feels like it can make us happy. And yet, in a way, it does. However, what I guess we're going to point to a bit in this conversation is what's going on in between the object and our response to it. Because in between that, the bit that we don't see is the thoughts that we have about said object and the stories that we might play to ourselves in terms of a narrative we might have about an object. So say, for example, if I admire a beautiful necklace and then that, you know, could bring me joy. Well, what's bringing me joy is my thinking about that necklace. Is it about the person who gave it to me? Is it about how it makes me feel? Is it any number of thoughts I might have about that necklace? And it's those feelings and emotions that I'm feeling that might make happiness occur. So it doesn't matter what we're kind of looking at in terms of the stuff and our emotions. It feels like it's whatever it might be that's making us feel a certain way, but it's our thoughts in relation to what we see, touch and feel, that is making us feel the way we do. So I just wanted to plant that seed at the offset as a little bit about the physics behind what's going on for us on a kind of brain level. So following that introduction, who is going to pick this one up from me now?
I mean, one of the things that comes to mind for me is the idea of I'll be happy when, that I think certainly in the past, that I think marketing maybe has a role to play in this as well, that we need things in order to be happy. And so we think that I'll be happy once I've got that Audi 4x4 that they've been advertising on the telly, or I'll be happy when I have that house or that necklace or pair of trainers or whatever it might be. That it's like our happiness is conditional on obtaining those things. And I think we've all kind of fallen for that in the past, and that maybe that kind of drives our desire to accumulate those things and go out and get them. And I don't think there's anything wrong at all with buying stuff. Like, I live in a house which I bought, and I'm wearing clothes I bought, and I think it's okay to do all those things. And we're certainly not sitting here kind of anti-consumerist people kind of wagging the finger and saying you shouldn't be going out and buying Christmas presents or anything like that. But I think it's just really interesting to actually look at what's driving our desire for those things. Is it because we think that our happiness depends on it, or is it because actually we really, really like that jumper, or actually we'd really, really love to wake up every morning and look at that, whatever it might be, picture that you bought to hang on the wall. And so I think, like, when I was thinking about what to say this evening, I was kind of like, based on everything that Natalie's just said, it's like, well, no, stuff can't make us happy, surely. But then actually I don't think it's as simple as that at all, because yes, like this mug physically cannot kind of make me feel a certain way, but that is my favorite mug, and I love to drink out of it because of just everything about it. It's just a really great mug. But I think it's just looking at the kind of cause and effect. So actually fundamentally, we don't need stuff. This is my opinion anyway. Fundamentally, we don't need stuff in order to be happy, but stuff can still bring us joy. So I think it's really interesting to start kind of unpacking, okay, well, what is it that's actually really driving this? What's the story behind it? Am I buying this outfit because the adverts on the TV say that I'm gonna feel fantastic if I wear it, and all my friends have a similar sort of thing, so I need that in order to fit in, and therefore I will feel more confident and secure and all that kind of stuff. So starting to kind of unpick some of the story that might have built up, often unknowingly, and actually looking at, is it that kind of stuff that's driving it, or is it a kind of a conscious decision that we make because we really love that thing? I hope that kind of makes sense. You're on mute if you're trying to talk, Mum.
Okay, I started talking then, and that wasn't helpful, was it, to be on mute? Yes, it makes complete sense, what you're saying. And what was in my mind when you were talking was, and this kind of, it's not something we're taught, is it? You know, even if you think about it, it's the not even the purchasing of stuff, but it's even at school, I need to be friends with that person to make me feel good about myself. Or and then absolutely carries on in school with needing the trainers, the right trainers, to feel part of the accepted gang. And it can spiral. It can spiral out of control if we don't know that, as Natalie and Bea have said, is that our happiness doesn't come from that thing or even that person. But of course, it can bring us joy at the same time. And there's again, when we were thinking about this, what we wanted to share tonight, I remember reading a quote ages ago, and I found it again, so I just want to share it. And it's somebody, she's a US journalist called Ellen Goodman, and she wrote, "Normal is getting dressed in clothes that you buy for work and driving through traffic in a car that you are still paying for in order to get to the job you need to pay for the clothes and the car and the house you leave vacant all day so you can afford to live in it." And that just kind of went with my head, because so much of what we buy is getting onto that kind of hamster wheel, really, of needing to fit in or feeling that we need to fit in. So we need to accumulate all of these things. And again, and I think this is key, and we'll all be saying this, we're not some kind of bar humbug kind of people or aspiring Buddhist monks sitting on top of a mountain. But actually it's the conscious purchasing of things and the asking ourselves the question about why we might be buying that, why we might want that. And to be honest with ourselves about what's going on and what feels real for us. And I think that then, well, I think that's a good question to ask ourselves.
I think what comes to mind for me is that there are so many expectations attached to those things as well. So it's like, by a certain age, I'm expected to have bought a house. And then by a certain age after that, or once I get a certain job, then I'm expected to drive a nice car. And those kind of expectations that, again, we often we're not even conscious of. But these kind of unwritten, I mean, it's not like they're kind of written down in life and we're handed them at the age of as a small child. But it's those things, and I guess it's just, again, stopping to start to become aware of some of those things. And it's like, okay, but what if I didn't? Like, what happens then? And if it's, oh yeah, I wouldn't be respected, or I wouldn't be a real grown-up if I didn't have X, Y, and Z. And it's crap, really. But those answers might make us feel uncomfortable, because maybe it feels like we have to kind of prove ourselves that we are a successful, capable adult that is all of those things that are required in order to obtain those things. So it's kind of proving our worth.
That's so interesting, because it's going back to, we did one of our talks on success, and it's that I had just thoughts flooding my head then about equating success with stuff, and it's like, I live in rented accommodation, all right? And there are moments that I think that actually I should have my own house. So there's all sorts of, if I thought if I truly thought that my worth was tied up in the size of my mortgage, let's say, because I would have a mortgage, I wouldn't own it outright, then, or even if I did own it outright, it's still, my worth cannot ever be tied up with the stuff that I have. And that brings me to love and stuff. You know, how, you know, thinking about, you know, and I've heard this in the past, that, well, if you loved me, you'd buy me that thing, or I will only feel loved if you buy me something. And if you don't, then that means you don't love me. And that's common, all right, and dangerous. Because, well, on so many levels, but it's like our worth and our lovability or loving someone can never be measured by things.
Oh my gosh. And we're unconsciously passing that on. You know, so if I buy my daughter a treat, I'll be like, oh, go on, I love you. It's like, well, if I didn't love you, I wouldn't buy it. That's the message. And that's absolutely not what I mean at all. It got me thinking as well, Rebecca, as you were speaking about this idea of love and tokens of love and how marketing just, you know, run away with Christmas presents and Valentine's and all those things. But actually this idea that we're led to believe by the advertising companies as well, that, you know, go on, spoil yourself. You deserve it. And I think my mum's passed away, but I remember talking to her years ago about this and just, well, you can't deserve something every time something brilliant happens. Like, how often do you need to spoil yourself to feel? And so this year has been very interesting for me with COVID, because my own business took a massive hit. And so, you know, over the summer, any piece of success or any business I won or any new opportunity I saw, I'd be like, ooh, I deserve a treat because I must be doing well, even though the market's awful. And I'd find myself just picking up my phone, because now obviously the shop is here. The shops are with me all the time. I pick up my phone because I deserve it, because I had a little bit of what I thought was business success. And I'm immediately trying to find something to actually fill my need to be appreciated. And that's what I worked out. If I pick up that phone because I want to buy something just because I want to, like the girls will know, I've got a really good, sorry for any men on the call, but I've got a really good pair of gold high heel shoes, and they're really good. I mean, I was always going to buy those shoes, sod it. If I'm buying in that way, that's because I just love myself and I want a nice pair of shoes. If I'm picking up that phone because there's something missing in my life, which is what this piece of business success in the summer made me realize, I need appreciation. I will therefore buy something to try and appreciate myself, instead of sitting with that need and working out another way to meet it. And then I realized this is kind of an addictive behavior for me that I never saw coming and never realized before. But it's that kind of, I will comfort myself through spending money sometimes, not always. And I'm very much aware of it now, and it's kind of growing awareness. So I have to make choices. And I think somebody's already mentioned consciously choosing what you're buying and why you're buying it. If I buy something because the thoughts around it bring me joy, or because the experience of the thing brings me joy, or I'm buying something for somebody else that's not, you know, wouldn't make their love conditional for me, with me, versus am I buying it because I have some other need that I can't identify and I think that will give me a quick fix. And that's the difference. And that's what's really shifted for me, in that, oh, okay, if I'm shopping, I just have to think. If I'm spending in any way, if I'm browsing for new gin, if I'm buying anything, I just go, okay, Rach, is this because you're lovely, or is this because you need something that you're not getting right now? And that's been, well, I'm spending less, let's put it that way. And that's helpful.
You know, when you're saying that, the other thing that comes to mind is the flip of that, which which I have experienced, you know, many years ago, actually when Bea was ill, was I really struggled. I needed a winter coat. So we're going back probably 2007 now. I needed a new winter coat, but I struggled to buy that for myself because I didn't feel I deserved it. Right, big self-esteem issues going on back then. Right, and Bea's dad, I was married at the time, and he was just going, you know, what, just go and buy a coat. But I really struggled because it meant so many things to me that I didn't feel worthy enough. And now when I look back, it's like, what the hell was going on there around that? But again, you see, notice, I'm sure I'm not the only one that does that. You know, I don't deserve it. Yeah.
And I've had like feeling guilty,
yeah.
like, which I guess is coming from the same root of things, isn't it? Sort of like, oh, I feel bad about buying that. It's linked to that piece around deserving. And also for me, I think there were habits of not being able to buy things because, you know, we didn't have enough money to. So when there was money, the habits were long standing. So I wouldn't dream of, you know, spending, I don't know, X on a t-shirt or what have you. And I'm still sometimes find it challenging, you know, and that's interesting. I think what I wanted to say, which was kind of coming up for me, is it's noticing whether our behavior is linked to not wanting to feel uncomfortable. Like, are we able to tolerate our feelings of discomfort? Because I think that's what gets in our way, and not just potentially in this example we're talking about shopping, but that's anything we might have an addictive tendency towards. We feel uncomfortable. We are not used to feeling uncomfortable or don't like it. We have a low tolerance for feeling uncomfortable. So we comfort it and we solve it by whatever might be our coping strategy. And I think when we look within and just kind of notice what that feeling is that's going on for us, you know, that is our barometer. It tells us everything we need to know. It's the perfect feedback system in the moment that will indicate whether we're coming from a place of insecurity or security. You can feel it. And when we take a moment to check in on that, well, you know, I mean, okay, we're talking about the context of shopping here, but, you know, this is profound. This is massive when we open up a space to pause and take a moment to become aware of our feelings in any given moment and tune into what they're telling us. And if we notice we're coming from a place of insecurity, we don't have to really do anything about it. That's okay. It's normal to feel insecure. But just knowing that is, you know, is helpful. We might want to put off making some big decisions until we're feeling a bit more grounded. We might want to take a pause, let wisdom step in a bit. And just before I hand this over to the group again, what was coming up for me also is I think we sometimes get tangled up between the pursuit of happiness and the pursuit of success. And I think are two different things, but we kind of almost see it as synonymous, but it's not. So we have this pursuit of success, and I think that's largely driven by, you know, there's things around expectations and social norms, and also what we're genuinely driven to do. And then there's the pursuit of happiness, which, you know, ultimately, you know, you hear it, it comes from within, but we sometimes don't see where we can find it from within. So we look elsewhere for it. And it feels like things in the pursuit to success can be counted and can be measured. Things in the pursuit to happiness can't. And we don't like it when we can't measure stuff. So do you know what? So happiness, we've got, you know, love, connection, understanding, belonging, you know, all that good stuff that we can't really, I mean, we can measure it in our hearts. We can measure it in our sense of self and security, but, you know, the measurement's largely unknown outside of that. So that's new for me this evening. That's kind of just bubbling up.
You're on a flipping roll, Natalie. That's
that was amazing. Yeah.
Oh my God, because we haven't heard that.
We have not talked about that.
I love it how on a Friday. I love it how on a Friday, every Friday we have a catch up, and so the Friday before an event we'll kind of chat about what we might want to cover. We didn't cover any of the stuff we've talked about so far this evening, which I love. But no, I love that so much, Natalie. And I think what's interesting as well is that this whole pursuit of happiness and the whole idea of sitting with discomfort is that, and this is kind of veering away from the topic we're actually going to be talking about, but I'm going to go with it, that going back to I've probably said it a million times on these calls, but the Glennon Doyle quote, which is life isn't about feeling happy, it's about feeling everything. And so I think going back to the whole idea of accumulating stuff, that when we're not feeling happy, that often we can kind of turn to, like as you were saying, Rach, turn to our phones or our laptops to get something to cheer us up, to get back to this point, this level of happiness that we think we should be at. It's like that level of happiness is should be our default all the time. And if we're not there, then we need help from external stuff to get us back up there, whether that's shopping or something else. So actually, I think if we kind of redefine the target, which actually isn't necessarily happiness all the time, and like, I love being happy, I think we all do, and I'm not saying we shouldn't want to feel that, but actually it's almost kind of managing our expectations that actually that's not what the whole point of life is about, this journey to pursue happiness, to reach this level of happiness, and then try and do whatever we can to maintain that, because then once we fall below it, it feels really rubbish and we feel like we're failing somehow. And that's, again, going back to the whole shopping thing, that, oh God, I'm feeling a bit down, or maybe I'll just buy something to cheer me up a bit. And it might be that we kind of actually decide to get something that we do really love, and we kind of make that conscious decision. But I think so often, and kind of obviously only speaking for myself, that it can be that impulse, I need a quick fix, so I'm going to get this thing that I think will do it for me, rather than sitting in that kind of discomfort. And actually, like, it doesn't even have to, I think what's been really interesting for me is that since I've kind of redefined that target and accepted that life isn't actually about feeling happy all the time, that actually when I'm not feeling happy, I'm so much more okay with that now. As I haven't been particularly well recently, I was feeling really, really low earlier, and I was really conscious of the moments where I was judging that feeling and wanting to fix it, versus the moments where I just kind of allowed myself to feel it. And the pain only ever came from when I was trying to fight it and trying to fix it. So actually, I wonder what would happen to all the various habits we had, the kind of the fix it habits that we have, whether that's shopping or something else, what would happen to that if we redefined how we're actually meant to be living?
Oh my God.
B again. Wow. And what came to mind then, again, is a metaphor that we've used before, I know, is the difference between the slow release of a bowl of porridge versus the quick sugar fix of a bowl of Cocoa Pops. And the difference between being able to sit with the feeling and not feel I need to fix it. Because we know what happens after a bowl of Cocoa Pops. You know, there is a down. There is a down. And that comes from, those kind of impulse purchases even, or believing that the thing itself will bring the happiness.
It's like it gives the sugar high with the big crash versus the...
Yeah. There's one other thing I was thinking about, which I find a bit worrying, particularly for the next generation, or just for our environment, sustainability sense. And that's just that some people in my world, some clients of mine, some people that I know really do have a budget, or a, you know, for Christmas or for birthday or for this thing that I need a present for, or for this celebration, this holiday, we all spend £100 on each other. And I know clients of mine struggling to generate enough income to pay for their life as is and save for the buying of presents for things, because that's what we've always done, or that's what we always do. And so I'm absolutely a massive Christmas all celebration fan. Give me the champagne, anything. Like, I love presents, but I just think, can we as human beings approach this season, or perhaps all consumerism moving forwards, and just think more consciously about how and what expectations we have of people around us. And, you know, so many people, I know it's Christmas specific, but so many people have introduced a Secret Santa, so everybody buys one thing for everybody, not it's £100 on each person or whatever the budget is. I just think there's a lot of people in my world who feel pressure to have to spend that amount of money, so much so that I'll have conversations where they go, I just need to find 2 or 3 more things and then I've got enough to pass on, to wrap, to give to this person who doesn't need the stuff anyway, just so that you've ticked the budget box. And so that side of it, I go and buy presents for people all year round, and let's do that, and let's celebrate stuff. But actually, if I hear things like that, I often ask the question about, you know, does it need to be exactly like that, or is there another way to demonstrate this? That just worries me for life going forwards, really.
It's coming back to that the love thing, isn't it? Equating love with
stuff.
I mean, as a family, my extended family, we always used to buy for everyone, you know, the aunts and the uncles and the cousins and all of that. But over the last, I don't know how many years, 5 years maybe, when we're all together, we just do a Secret Santa. Mm-hmm. And then the joy in choosing for that one person something that you know that they will love, rather than, as you said, Rach, about I just need 2 more things and then I'm done.
It needs to look enough.
Yes, and it comes back to the conscious purchasing, I think. Because there's love that goes into that then, isn't there? God. I'm sure we've all received gifts in the past where from somebody, because they had to buy for you, and you can sense that I had to get something for you, and it's I certainly have received stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh God, I hadn't really thought about this budget you set to, you know, you spend that on everyone, and in the somehow equating it to fairness or some, you know, some story we've made up.
I'm going to open the chat. So please feel free to jot down your comments, your questions, your whatever, as we will continue to, and I'm happy to look after that chat. Right.
One thing that I was going to add was, I mentioned at the start, but we're not at all saying that we shouldn't go out and buy Christmas presents for people. But it's just so interesting to, I think, yeah, that whole thing about it needs to look enough, and there needs to be enough under the tree, or what will they think if it's not as much as last year, or all that stuff. And again, it's those expectations, and actually not being shy to have those conversations with people, because actually the more aware of, because I think so much of this is ingrained. I mean, as you can probably see, we're all just kind of realizing stuff right now. But it's so ingrained, and actually, yeah, if that means having a conversation with family and friends saying, actually, I'd really rather do this differently, or just having a conversation about that, rather than, oh yeah, we've done this forever, so I have to just keep going. And again, it's like being okay with that uncomfortable feeling, or that uncomfortable conversation. And actually, if that friend or family member turns around and says something really awful, then it probably means that's one less person to buy for.
But you're right, unless we have some conversations to change the rules, that's if we want to change the rules we're playing the game by.
Yeah.
But you know, nothing will change unless we kind of be part of that solution. Yeah, really, really interesting. Well, I certainly know that Lily does not need any more toys. It's like enough. Yeah.
One of the other things that came up the other day was the idea of comparisons. And like we've kind of said a bit already, that when you're at school, you feel like you need the latest pair of trainers or bag or whatever it is in order to feel like you fit in or you're accepted. And it kind of got me thinking about the types of comparisons we make in life and in society, and how so often we compare stuff and looks and appearances. We compare, what we have, what we own, and yet there are things that, like, some things like about ourselves, like as a person, not the kind of the casing that we're in, but who we are as people, that we never compare, like about our values and things like that. That I just thought it was something that I'd never really thought about before, that we so often focus. I guess it's the stuff you can see versus the stuff you can't. But it's so much easier to compare what's literally in front of you. But how we measure up, we then measure ourselves by those standards, if that makes sense. So we're comparing physical things to then imply non-physical things about ourselves, and actually how helpful that actually is. But again, I think it's so ingrained, but I don't know where it came from. Marketing, is that to blame for everything?
It's like a superficial level of conversation, isn't it, that we've somehow just got into and are now maintaining. It's kind of, you know, I might ask you, oh, I don't even know, any thoughts about where you're going on holiday this year, for example, and automatically we're into a holiday off. And actually, I would prefer to know, you know, what are you doing this year to make sure your children learn how to continue to be kind? Or what are you doing yourself this year from a self-development perspective? Or something where I get to know a bit more about you, or, you know, any of the above that's less superficial. And I think I love this point when you talked about this on Friday as well, B, in our chat, because this is where we talked about, you know, what you say, what legacy you leave, and what people know and love you for. And we joked around, you know, here lies Rachel. She had an amazing house and some great shoes. You know, that's not what they're going to say when I go. They're like, well, she's the woman that didn't shut up, or she's the woman that made us laugh sometimes, or they're not going to talk about the material things I accumulated over my life and then passed on. They're going to talk, and the same way we don't talk about those things about each other. It's like, well, why are we comparing those external things when actually that's not how I would describe any one of you to anyone on this call. And we're missing that. And I think we accidentally or unconsciously feed that by engaging in superficial conversation. You know, somebody gets a new car, excuse me, oh, what's the next model? I mean, who cares? I don't know what we're doing.
We're seeing that and seeing a reflection. Somehow we've made an association with our own self-worth, haven't we, when we compare and then think we're less because we don't have it. And then in order for us to be happy or feel successful, you know, we then might try and strive or set an expectation against that. And I think, coming back to the earlier point, well, what's sitting in that feeling is likely to be some level of insecurity. It's not coming from a place where we feel really secure in our own worth. And the difficulty is when we're always kind of comparing and trying to be like other people and have the things that other people have, we're moving further and further away from what is most meaningful to our kind of truest self, because it's the Little Miss comparison that's driving that show.
I'm just going to read out some of the comments, and I'm going to read them out because it was brought to my attention that obviously when people get the recording, they don't get the chat.
Oh, learning all the time.
Yes, that was a thank you for that one. So Louise said, they say that we live up to 95% of our time unconsciously. These are great examples of assumptions of stuff we just do unconsciously. We'll all be good though, because in this conversation, we're making it conscious, and that's, yeah, absolutely. Mark has got a great question here. So he says, ladies, accepting that stuff doesn't make us happy, turning this around the other way, on what would you suggest we focus in an effort to make us happy? And it's interesting, Mark, because I saw your question come up, and then it was kind of Natalie was talking a bit about that just then. But it's I think it's about seeing the whole human experience, that you know, our sense of who we are, our not needing to look outside of us for anything. And that being happy is one of the many things we get to experience as a human being. And
sorry, go on.
No, go on, carry on.
I was just going to add that it's a really interesting question, because only you have the answer to that. That's a kind of not a very helpful answer to that question, but I think only we know what makes us happy. And like we've said, it's not that drinking out of this mug doesn't make me happy, but it's that I don't need that mug in order to be happy, but it still brings me happiness. I hope that makes sense. So actually, like the things that bring you happiness and bring you joy, it might be the smallest of things. Like for me, it might be going for a walk in the park with the sun out, and or it might be having a gin.
I knew you were going to say gin.
So predictable. Or it might be like doing these calls. Like these calls like really make me happy, and the catch-ups that the four of us have on a Friday, that makes me really happy. But I think what we're just pointing to is what's kind of happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That
you don't, your sense of well-being doesn't depend on these calls.
Yeah, exactly.
It's, you know, it's nice, it's lovely and wonderful to do them, but your sense of okayness, I guess, doesn't depend on that. Sarah says, I'm a big fan of the Buddhist concept of non-attachment, to the point where if my house burnt down and I lost everything, I genuinely wouldn't mind. Everything is replaceable. And I know Sarah, and I know she means that.
Yeah.
That's not some, you know, glib, yeah, but you would really. It's like, no. And I totally get that. And I remember changing computers and thinking I had lost photographs. I mean, tons of photographs from when the kids were growing up. And I was absolutely beside myself for a while. And then I got used to the fact that that didn't matter as much as I had made out it mattered. And what was funny was then somebody was able to find them again, and that was great. But that was a big moment for me to actually realize that that my happiness, my well-being wasn't dependent on flicking through the squares of photographs on my computer, because I had memories. Yeah. And Abby says, and I love this as well, it's the giving experiences can be an alternative, massage, painting courses and things. And I love that we've, you know, people are moving more towards things like that as well. I think that's, or making things yourself, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Sarah just said I'd like to recommend a documentary on Netflix called Minimalism. Also a book called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up.
Is that the Marie Kondo one?
The Marie Kondo book.
Joy or something different?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I have just remembered that in the blurb for this talk, we were going to comment about what we would like more of or maybe less of in the coming year. So I don't know whether that's a place to go to touch on.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and actually, if anyone wants to write anything in the chat about that, then please do. But I think, Mum, it was something that you had talked about with a client or something at some point.
I used to with clients just kind of almost at the end of the year. So it was almost that kind of end of December into January, couple of questions, or get them to think about what they would like more of in the coming year and what they would like less of. And we used to have some amazing conversations around that. And it was an exercise I used to do myself as well, because it really got me to become conscious. I think that was the thing, to become conscious, rather than just getting on the, you know, start of a new year and just doing what I've always done, but actually to consciously choose about those things. And it's often the little things that you want. And it tends to come down to, you know, peace or kindness or connection.
And it's a much nicer question than kind of New Year's resolutions, which is often stuff that we really, really don't want to do. But for the first few weeks in January, we try and force ourselves to do it, and then beat ourselves up about the fact that we haven't continued with those things.
See, this is the difference, because with the New Year's resolutions, we're relying on willpower to take us there. It requires us to be strong and resolute and disciplined. You know, looking in the other direction is just more gentler, more loving, more compassionate, more in line with self-care. And it's more tuned in to actually what we want in a deeper sense, not coming from the insecurity angle. You know, and I think invariably looking in that direction, they're more sustainable anyway, or in my experience seems to be so.
Because the resolutions, well, in my experience, a lot of them are based on, oh, I really should join a gym, or I really should stop smoking, or I really should do X, Y, Z, or so and so is doing this, so I should probably do that too. Whereas I think I'm like, no wonder we don't keep up with them. And it's like, it's not in line with what we actually want and what we kind of consciously choose to do, which I think is a lot more long lasting.
And bringing happiness, you know, because I gave up setting New Year's resolutions because I just became so flipping miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're about 5 minutes out now, I think, aren't we?
Yeah.
I love your comment there. Less comparison and more conversations.
Where I call it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, lovely. Yeah, nice. More inspirational conversations like this. Thank you. And less uninteresting work. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great? I'm sure there are so many people. I feel extremely grateful that I have interesting work.
Yeah.
And, and isn't that an interesting one? And obviously I have my own business, so I can choose, but actually to choose to maybe have less stuff, or the opportunity to buy, you know, less stuff and have more interesting work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a good from Victoria, and I can't see now. I've messed up my chat, so I
read it.
Yes, please.
Okay, so from Victoria, and she says, a friend treated herself to some £5 flowers. When she got home, she saw her elderly neighbour and gave her the flowers, who was very grateful. My friend asked me why it is she finds it difficult to buy something for herself, even £5 flowers. I asked her which would give her the most satisfaction. She said giving the flowers. I challenged her to buy herself some flowers on her next shopping trip and send me a photo. I'm still waiting for the photo. I think on occasion we should value ourselves with a small treat. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to the point about feeling like we don't deserve something. And yeah, like if you want to, and I think even calling it a treat kind of stigmatizes it a little bit because it kind of makes it sound naughty.
Yeah.
But ultimately do what feels right and what feels warm. We often, well, we always now make decisions, the four of us, based on what feels warm and what feels cold. If you've read Glennon Doyle's Untamed, you'll understand. So actually, yeah, like there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all.
If it feels warm, buy the warm thing. Yeah.
Victoria's added to the end of that, naughty but nice. Yeah, can you see that even in that language there's this guilt that's kind of written into that. There was an advert for something that was naughty but nice. Was it, I have a feeling it was something like cream cakes or something, I don't know, but it's like there's the judgment there, isn't there? No wonder we're all confused.
I know. I think it's kind of avoiding excessive behaviors where you're buying bulk, you know, huge amounts of items that aren't consciously bought. Yeah. But at the same time, recognizing that our self-worth isn't attached to the material thing that you're buying. And when you want to, and it feels warm and it feels good, buy the thing that you want to buy. It's that, because you're worth it. I hate those adverts, but you know, like we are genuinely, we can just buy what we want to buy because we're working and we should. I have just loved this chat and spending an hour with you, especially after we had to cancel. So for those of you who were booked onto the Direction, Passion and Purpose event, we are holding that on the 25th of November. And we cancelled that last event for personal reasons. And we're pleased that we did, and we needed the time. So thank you for everyone who, we got a lot of messages from people just checking in that we were okay, and we are all okay. We're also in the early, probably the first week of December, going to release our stress-free festive season video. It remains to be seen as to whether or not we're going to dress up in a festive way, just, you know, for entertainment and to mostly make ourselves laugh. But we're going to send that out as a video to watch at your own convenience. And then the most exciting thing, the warmest piece of work we have come up with lately, is we're planning our first ever 4 Women 4 Decades retreat. Not sure of the name yet, more information to follow, but that will be held on the 9th and 10th of January, in case you want to virtually, to join us in this way on screen to spend some time thinking about the start of next year. Ladies, I will thank you. I'll thank everybody for joining and for all of the comments in the chat. It's really, as always, been a pleasure to work with you and see you all this evening. We hope to see you very soon. I will ask Rebecca to stop the recording so we can just do big waves and say bye.